Welcome to Asking for a Trend. Breaking news. Apple earnings just now hitting the tape. And Yahoo Finance's Dan Howley is here with the numbers. Dan.
Yeah, Josh, big beat for Apple here on the top and bottom line. They said they recorded all-time record revenue for the iPhone, $85.3 billion. That's well ahead of the $78.3 billion that analysts were anticipating. The company saw $69.1 billion in the prior quarter. EPS came in at $2.84 on revenue of $143.8 billion. Analysts were anticipating $2.68 on $138.4 billion. So again, a big beat there. Services revenue was in line with expectations. And then we had Mac, iPad revenue at $8.4 billion and $8.6 billion respectively. Wearables came in at $11.4 billion. But one important aspect of this is greater China sales. Over the last 3 of 4 quarters, they had seen declines in that region. But now in this quarter, they had $25.5 billion in revenue. That's up nearly 38% year over year. So a big return to growth there out of China. This was something that Tim Cook had kind of telegraphed in the prior quarter earnings call, saying that they were expecting huge iPhone sales. Part of this has to do with kind of the lapping of people going out and purchasing tons of new smartphones during the COVID era. It's been 6 years now. People upgrade around that kind of time. The new iPhones, the 17, 17 Pro, they're interesting. They have slightly tweaked designs. I think it'll be interesting if we get any kind of color as to where the iPhone Air was in terms of sales. We have been hearing different inklings that perhaps sales volume of that particular model have been a little disappointing, and that a lot of people are flocking to the Pros and the standard iPhone 17. They don't really break those numbers down anymore, so we'll just have to wait and see. It also will be interesting to see what Tim Cook has to say about the recent tie-up with Google, where Apple and Google are going to be kind of combining with AI and having Google's Gemini power Apple's next-gen Siri.
Dan, let's just talk about this iPhone revenue number for a second, because this is still Apple's bread and butter, of course. This is blows past what the street was looking for. I mean, it clocks in around $85 billion. Analysts had penciled in closer to $78 billion. We knew going in here, Dan, that analysts had modeled that, listen, this iPhone 17 cycle has been strong. It's been solid. Why has it been solid, Dan? What's been driving that?
Yeah, I think it's that COVID kind of, timing, right? I mean, we'll probably see that throughout the next year, maybe 2, just because it's one of those things where people go out and buy. You don't buy a phone every 2 years now, right? You're not on a plan that lets you do that. So, you pay it off slowly over time, and then, maybe you just held on to it because you're like, well, I just paid off that part of the bill. Why do I want to tack something else on? And now you're probably thinking, all right, well, it's due. I'm several generations behind. I want to get the new hotness. I don't think anyone's going out to buy this because of Apple Intelligence. I don't think anyone's going to do that at any point unless this thing can, I could say, hey, Siri, get me tacos right now, and it personally delivers the tacos to my door. That's not happening. I think a lot of this has to do with the improved cameras, the improved screens. The battery life is a lot better. The slightly changed design, I think, piqued people's interest. If you look, you'll see a lot of people who have the new phones in that burnt orange color for the Pros. I think that got people pretty excited. And so that's where I think a lot of this came from, not necessarily, the fact that people are interested in iPhones again. It's just, I think that timing lines up. And, we saw that kind of with PCs this year, where PC sales in general were up 9% for 2025. It's that kind of lapping of the time frame where people go out and they say, okay, 5, 6, 7 years, that's where I need to go out and get a new device. TV sales might start to pick up soon too, because that's, another kind of device, but that's for another day.
Does it tell you anything too, Dan, just about how much time we spend talking about AI and consumer AI? But is this a window into how much does it really matter to a lot of consumers, whether it is a must-have feature or no? Right now, what consumers are focused on is listen, what they've always been focused on with iPhone at least, which is it's the processor, it's the battery, it's the camera.
Yeah, I've probably said this enough to be annoying, but I don't think that people are going out right now and saying, boy, I really need to buy a new iPhone for that Apple Intelligence. And I don't think people are going out and saying that with their Google phones or their Samsung phones. A lot of people still use ChatGPT, obviously. You can use that through the app. If you have a Samsung or Android phone, you can access Google's Gemini through their own individual app there. For Google's Pixel phones, it's built right in, right? So I don't think people are necessarily going out and saying, I need to buy a new phone because of AI. They're going out and saying, I need a new phone because my battery sucks. They're going out and saying, I need a new phone because I want a better camera or the screen looks better. That's how people buy these devices. The software is the software. When Siri came out, no one said, guys, let's talk to our phones like bozos, in public for no reason and ask it to play a song and then have it fail 8 times. They said, no, let's go get a new phone because the camera's good, the battery's good. And that's exactly what I think happened here. It's a great device. They updated the software with the liquid glass display. Whether or not people like that or not, that's up to them. But I think it's just a matter of the hardware being new and interesting again for the moment. Next year, we could have a foldable phone. That could even spark greater sales, although I'm kind of worried about the price tag on that.
Jay, it is good to see you. So listen, we have Apple's results. We don't have the guidance yet, Jay. As always, we'd expect executives on the call to offer some more color and commentary about what they see ahead. But give me your take on the quarter, Jay, and especially what you make of this iPhone revenue number, which easily beats the street. I mean, it came in, Jay, around 85 billion. The street was closer to around 78.
Yeah, so far so good. I mean, my basic thesis on Apple right now is very, very tactical in that the current cycle of phones, the current cycle of products looks really strong. People are buying those phones. Your previous guest was saying the same thing. People like the new phones, and sometimes it's as simple as that, right? I think the numbers look good, both in terms of top line for revenue, for iPhones, for China. China looked better than expected. And most importantly, for gross margins. The gross margins look really good this quarter, way above where I was expecting them.
I do want to talk about AI for a second here, though, Jay, because we know, listen, we heard Apple's going to use Google's Gemini models to power its AI efforts. That's going to include a more personalized Siri. I'm just curious what you make of that, Jay. What kind of impact you think that could have on the next iPhone upgrade cycle, in your opinion?
So I think ultimately AI is an existential threat for Apple. They need to get it right. But the good news is that they have time to do that. They don't need their own model today. They are in a good place working with Google, working with some of the other companies to sort of exist on the platform. Siri just isn't all that, right? It's not that exciting. It doesn't do that much, and it could use for people want better experience now. Though they're used to what ChatGPT or Claude has to offer, and having Google behind them should get Siri to someplace that's at least functional and useful, and give Apple time to sort out its own house and get its own AI team to where it needs to be.
Jay, you mentioned margins. Let's stay on that for a second, because that was a big topic of debate heading into this print. A lot of your colleagues on the street were writing about this, and specifically the rising memory cost, Jay, and they're wondering, okay, they're trying to game out and model what could that mean actually for Apple's pricing and margins in the quarters ahead. How do you see it, Jay? What levers does Tim Cook have to pull on that?
So it's a big question. It's why I'm really waiting to hear what they have for the guide. That's going to be critical. They did get asked about memory prices on their last earnings call a quarter ago, and they said that they had put in place long-term agreements with the memory vendors that sort of lock up pricing for some long period of time. Since then, spot prices for memory have just kept going up and up and up. And eventually contract prices will converge with spot prices. And so that's a sort of ongoing risk this year, looking at where they're going to see, are they going to keep to that story that they have these long-term price agreements in place? It's really important for Apple, especially on the margin front. They make a lot of memory from memory, right? When you buy an iPhone, you pay an extra $100 to get another whatever amount of RAM or flash. That has a lot of margin baked into it. It doesn't cost them $100 to do that. And so what are they going to do sort of with those price increases? Are they going to make the consumer eat them? Are they going to, fit it into their own gross margins? We don't know. The guy's going to tell us a lot. And I think that plays out later in the year when we get what is probably going to be a folding phone. That's going to be pretty expensive. How much elasticity is there for demand? Are consumers going to pay big numbers for that? That may save them in the end.
What about Greater China, Jay? That's another important data point I just want to run by you. Q1 Greater China revenue, $25.5 billion. That was a beat. Your colleagues on the street, the estimate consensus, Jay, was more like 21.8. What do you make of that number? How do you see business for Apple in China kind of evolving from here?
I think Apple is in this weird place where it has to walk this very fine line. Like, they're very dependent on China, both the market and for their manufacturing base. They're probably too dependent for their own good. So they have to walk this fine line between, Tim Cook going to see the president every occasion and saying all the right things in China. So far, they've maintained that. I think the fact that they're doing well in China, as we see a lot of changes taking place in the Chinese smartphone market, prices are coming down for all their competitors there. Apple's doing really well. It's a good sign. Like, consumers in China still like Apple. They still like the brand, and I think that will carry the weight for at least for the time being.
Jay, great to have you on the show today. Appreciate that analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.